Thanks. My name's Tim. I'm an alcoholic. Sorry that wasn't a very Christmassy reading, but it is an AA meeting after all. And I've heard people say it's alcoholism, not alcoholism. So it doesn't matter how long I've been sober, as far as alcohol is concerned, because I'm never out of the woods. Not entirely. The whole journey is the woods. I've known enough people after years, donkey's years, who found their way back to alcohol. I've seen that enough, and also seen their difficulty coming back to know that I must take this very seriously, hence alcoholism, not alcoholism, and that what I find a very useful reminder. My date of sobriety is 24th of July 1993, and my home group is Brick Lane on a Saturday. And being around for a long time doesn't confer any authority on me at all, but I have seen a thing or two, and I have experienced a thing or two. And I'm also someone who didn't get it straight away. It was evident by 1990 that I shouldn't drink. There was a point in 1990 where I woke up in the morning thinking, when I was literally howling at the moon in the woods at 3 o'clock in the morning the night before, having had an absolute skinful, that this was not going in the right direction. It was also very clear that I was drinking under compulsion, under internal compulsion. I know, even by 1990, I was still in my teens. I knew I wasn't doing it because I liked it and because it was nice and because it gave me a lovely feeling. Well, sometimes it did and sometimes it didn't. And when it started to turn on me, which it did almost straight away, I simply took that into account and thought, well, there are going to be nights like that as well, are there? Very good. I'll just have to get used to it. And consequences started to build up very quickly. Important things in my life became no longer possible because I was just too drunk at the time of day in question or too hungover at the time of day in question to perform. And I thought, well, I'll just have to take that into account as well. Whatever alcohol cost me, I simply took it into account. I knew right from the beginning I was adjusting to it. I was not in control. I was adjusting myself to the fact that I was going to be drunk every day forever until I died. That was very clear. But I had enough, apparently, by 1990 and stopped. But then I started again. Step one admitted that I'm powerless over alcohol, that my life had become unmanageable, has got two parts. The first part is very straightforward. The fact that when I drink, I massively overshoot. I don't need to tell many stories, one will do. I remember waking up on a Saturday morning so ill from the amount that I'd consumed the night before. I crawled on my hands and knees. It took 45 minutes to the local accident and emergency unit in Hampstead. And the next thing I know, it was a couple of days later, I was drugged up to the eyeballs on the other side of the country. I drink too much. Is that clear? Like one story is enough. I don't need to tell 15. That's what I was like. Not every time, but that's what I was like. As a problem. But the real problem is that when that comes into my awareness, when I recognise, as I indeed did, that I'm like that, it has absolutely no long-term effect in terms of keeping me away from a drink. The way my alcoholism works, I relapsed in various ways for about 3 years, between 1990 and 1993. And what was also clear from that experience was that this return to drinking was not because of any particular triggers. It's not as though there was a time of the day. It's not as though there was a season. It's not as though there was a set of circumstances. It's not as though there was a particular emotion. It is not as though there was even any thinking at all preceding it that could mark it out. Well, it's that. If I can avoid that, I'll be all right. It would choose when I would do it. I would have no choice. I could be perfectly happy being sober at 12:30 in the afternoon and be drunk by 20 to 1. So it turns on a sixpence. And when it informs me that we're going to drink, because that's what it feels like. It feels like getting a notification. It's like getting a telegram. We're off to have a drink. A little story forms in my mind as to why I'm doing it. But that's not why I'm doing it. I'm doing it because I'm under compulsion. I'm under orders. And I knew I can fight it and I can negotiate with it for a little bit. But all I'm doing is delaying the inevitable. So eventually I gave up fighting it. I gave up negotiating with it. That is the problem that I came to AA with. I've known enough people outside AA who were excessive in their behaviour, but were able to rein it in. And I just can't. It's the end of it. I just can't. If I could have, I would have. I wouldn't have got to the doors of AA. There are plenty of other things to try first, and I tried them. The reason I'm here is because they didn't work. They might be suitable for other people, but not for me. So, the rest of my AA experience is simply what I did about it. And you'll notice, those of you who are eagle-eyed or who have been here for a while, that the rest of the programme, God seems to come in from step 2 onwards. And that is the answer, unfortunately. Unfortunately for me, because I was a very ill-educated atheist. I was very strong in my convictions of my atheism, but I'd read almost nothing on the subject. I'd certainly not discussed the question at any length with anyone that had any religious or spiritual experience. I'd simply made up my own mind, because shouldn't a person be able to do that and come to a reasonable conclusion? Well, no, is the answer to that, but I was convinced, and I was appalled at the notion that God might be involved. In fact, I did see from my first meeting God on the wall, but I didn't somehow connect it to AA, which is silly because it mentions alcohol as well. It's so clearly connected to AA, but I somehow dismissed it as part of the paraphernalia of the church that the meeting was being held in. So I cheerfully kept it at arm's length. But the question of God circled me like a wolf in the night, and I had to deal with it eventually. I tried to get round it. Sometimes people say God stands for group of drunks. I thought, well, I like that. I shall go with that. I'll go with that. And I'm sure it's very good for some people. But I could go to a meeting and not find relief. As they say, it was on me. The alcoholism was on me. And no matter what anyone in the room said, I was going to go and drink afterwards, and that was the end of it. So a group of drunks, it's a lovely idea as a sort of workaround or a substitute, but it's not powerful enough for me. And 4 o'clock in the morning, there is no, I know Zoom gives you everything all day long now, but certainly in 1993 there was no Zoom. No one was going to appreciate a phone call at 4 o'clock in the morning. But I wore people out, even during the day. I remember phoning people, hoping that they would somehow convince me that it was a good idea to stay sober, to persuade me to stay sober, and it didn't work. And I put myself, as it were, turned myself over to other human beings in AA and said, help me, I want to do something about this. But what they said didn't work. It didn't do what needed to be done within me. The impulse to drink was too strong. I cannot have a human power. My human power is not enough. Marjorie's human power is not enough. No one's human power is enough for me. And my friend Melody had whales as her higher power. Now, for a while, we thought it was the Principality of Wales. It wasn't. It was the aquatic mammal. Now, it's lovely. I'm sure whales are very nice in their own way. But I couldn't have a higher power like that. It worked for her. Because I saw in step 7 that whatever it is that I have as a higher power has got to remove my character defects. And a humpback whale is not going to do that. It just doesn't... to me, it's got to make sense. And the marvellous thing about step 2, as it's described in the big book, which I think it does very well, I think he does a marvellous job in We Agnostics of covering a lot of territory. His approach, the writer, was to say, no, it's rational to believe in a power greater than oneself. What's the evidence? You look around and Marjorie and Nigel and Sally and Susan were all the people at one's home group were all without sufficient power to stay sober. Them against alcoholism would win. And yet they're reporting sobriety day in, day out, week in, week out, year in, year out. Purely logical. They have accessed a power they didn't previously have. What's more powerful, me or whatever is keeping them sober? I couldn't keep them sober. So whatever is keeping Marjorie and all the rest of them sober is more powerful than I am. There just is a power greater than me, is keeping them sober. That's logic. There's nothing theological about that. There's nothing speculative or lost in the future or abstract or metaphysical. Either Marjorie is drunk or she's not. Either her stories about her drinking are true or they're not. If the stories are true and she's sober 10 years, there is a power greater than me that has helped Marjorie. The only remaining question is, might it help me? Now, that is speculative. I needed some faith for that. Faith is the ability to take an action with an uncertain outcome. And I thought, well, I don't have the capacity for faith. And people said, you've been taking decisions, taking actions your whole life with no certain outcome, because nothing has a certain outcome. Try it. I wasn't a scientist, but I used to sort of pretend I was to justify my atheism. I've got a scientific state of mind. And someone said, well, if you were a real scientist, you'd take the hypothesis there might be a higher power, you'd design an experiment to see if there was one, and then after you'd completed the experience, you'd draw a conclusion then. What you've got is prejudice, which is a judgment before the experiment. Do the experiment first. And I thought, well, it says in the book, we had to fearlessly face the proposition that either God was everything or God was nothing. When you're going to die anyway, as I indeed was, my slips were becoming increasingly perilous to myself and to other people. And I would see people around me. My friend Fred went to meetings with him every day for months. He wasn't there on the Friday. I called the place he lived on the Saturday, dead from a slip. My sponsor fell down some stone stairs and drunk and died. It was very clear that if I didn't try this experiment, I was going to die anyway. So I might as well give it a go. And the real clincher, you can theorise till you're blue in the face, but a little bit of experience will blow the theory out of the water. And I had an experience when I was about 3 weeks sober, when it was on me, as they say, and I knew I was going to drink. I thought the one thing I've not tried is a sincere, direct prayer to God to help me. And I prayed, and the desire to drink left me. I thought, well, that's the end of my drinking then. There's no more excuse. I now know there is something which will help me if I ask it sincerely. The sincerity seems to be important there. I asked it with all of me behind the asking. It's not as though there weren't emotions of fear and other things, but I asked wholeheartedly. And I hadn't drunk for a few weeks, but I haven't drunk since then. Now, the idea I've been given is this God is supposed to be in charge of my whole life. And that sounded very daunting, but to put it very simply, I was 21 when I got sober, not 21 now. I was 21 when I got sober, and I was deeply, deeply unhappy. However, there we go. I was deeply unhappy, and I'd been living life as I saw fit, as best I could, for, well, then a couple of decades and a year, and it hadn't worked. I was suicidal all of the time. So whatever plan I was going to adopt was certainly going to be better than that. I couldn't have lasted much longer on my own approach to living. I remember saying to my sponsor, I'm depressed. He was a doctor. I said to him, I'm depressed. And he said, of course you're depressed. Your life is depressing. The way you live your life is depressing. Do you want to change that? That idea was entirely novel. All sorts of ideas had been presented to me, or I'd ferreted out all sorts of other ideas as to why I was depressed. But at no time it had occurred to me I was producing my own unhappiness by how I was living, and that could change. So step 4, catalogue systematically, in accordance with the instructions given, what you've been doing with yourself the last few years, and what you've been thinking about things, the fear and the self-seeking. Catalogue it. Tell someone else. You get to step 6. Do you want to stay like that? That should be a no-brainer. It should be a yes-no question. It is a yes-no question. Because the problem is the whole basis of how I was living. It wasn't that I had the right approach, but some of the detail was off. The whole basis was off. What was the basis? I do what I want to do when I want to do it because I think it's going to make me happy. That was it. It hadn't worked. The system had to go. I had to go from being concerned with my welfare and other people's conduct to being concerned with my conduct and other people's welfare. It's a 180-degree turn. So that's the decision in step 7, to turn that round completely. All of the apologies were made in steps 8 and 9. All the people I could find, I was told the ones you can't find, you say a little prayer. You can even write a little letter and send it in an envelope with just a name and a stamp, but no address, and either it'll get to someone or it won't. But you'll have done your bit. I paid the money back, all of it. And I was free from doing that. No one had anything on me. I had a skip in my step after that. And my job today is really no different than it was 32 years ago. What I was told was you fit your life around AA. You don't fit AA around your life. So I've got meetings I go to. I've got a lot of sponsees. They will call me every morning and we go through the book. I've stopped trying to talk to people about their problems. It doesn't help. I just tell them what's in the book and I tell them my experience, show them how to do step 4, show them how to do step 8, hear the step 5, hear the preparations for step 9, and then they're good to go usually. Without any interference from me, I just have to purvey the goods. Much easier that way rather than getting involved. So I do most of the talking. It's marvellous. And I get to have a rest of my life as well. I seem to have an occupation / livelihood. I don't get to have a career because that's for me when I was self-centred as my principle of living. Now God gives me things to do and people seem to give me money for it. I don't understand at all. I just do the things. If I get above my station, I'm in trouble. If I start thinking about my position in the world, I'm in trouble. So I just keep it very simple. I do AA, everything else gets done in due course, and I can't think of a problem in my life. When I've got a problem, I say to God, you deal with that, and I forget about it. And it all sorts itself out. Don't know how, but it does. That's all I've got.